a favorite to win the tournament.
Undefeated in their group, having taken down PSG, Hanwha Life, and Fnatic.
RNG가 제 생각엔 C조에서 제일 강하다고 생각되는 팀인데
A team that could possibly 6-0.
我们可以赢你们第一次，就可以赢你们第二次。我觉得就是我们组就是都挺激烈的吧，因为我们打的都挺有来有回的。
They pull Hanwha Life apart. They give them a Baron and then take their Nexus.
꼭 이겨서 저희가 어느 정도인지 볼 수 있어야 할 것 같습니다.
就是下一次再遇见弗兰尼的话，我们还是有很大的信心能拿下他们。
They really have to stabilize if they want to have a shot at all.
To be honest, I'm pretty sure that we could actually beat every single team in our group at our top condition.
Group stages can be quite the torrent of emotions.
Sorry to all fans if we actually disappointing you, but we have a lot of chances against everyone, and we're actually doing our best.
And tomorrow's just another day.
PSG will go up to 2-1 in the group.
저번에 하나생명을 상대했을 때 정말 잘하는 팀이라고 느꼈고 전라인이 좀 체급이 강하다는 걸 느껴서
연습 잘 해가면은 승률이 많이 높게 나올 것으로 생각하고 있어요.
An incredible performance from Hanabi.
我觉得现在对上西组的3支队伍的话，其实我们都挺有自信的。
PSG themselves make it very clear we are here to stay.
因为我个人的目标是希望小组第一出线吧，所以在星期天再次交手的话，我们也会再见一下你们的。
Time to pick it up where they left off, the MSI semifinals.
RNG, MSI 때 복수를 하겠습니다.
PSG도 RNG를 잡기 이전에 거쳐가는 단계라고 생각하겠습니다.
我们已经在冰岛赢过一次了，我们会再赢一次。
It all leads to this. Make or break.
Vitality will take them.
A new era is waiting. Make it yours.
Welcome back to Worlds 2021, taking place in Reykjavik, Iceland. Now, yesterday we welcomed two Titans from Group B into the quarterfinals, and as PSG Talent and Hanwha Life arrive at the arena, our teams ready themselves for more historic upsets or broken hearts ahead of Group C's final gauntlet here today. I am Dash, joined by Dracos and Raz to kick off the day. To break it all down for you, as we have 6 more games, Dash, Dracos, and Raz, otherwise known as Dance Dance Revolution.
Oh! I feel like if we're keeping forward on that analogy, RNG are like the guy in the arcade that, like, stuff is going down when they put their arms
That's what
back.
I was about to say. As soon as the arms
and they
go
hold
back
on
and that
to it,
railing,
the legs are just flying, and you're like, oh, I thought this was a casual game for me. This is not.
We might not be at that level in Dance Dance Revolution, but we're that level of an analyst desk. I promise you that. As we mentioned moments ago yesterday, Group B finished their fight at Worlds with T1 and EDG emerging victorious to advance to the quarterfinals. And what an exciting day it was with T1 ultimately topping the group.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. I think by the time when I was casting the second half of it, you're like, okay, we're going straight into what I would imagine to be a tiebreaker. Nope. Nope.
100 Thieves had something to say about that.
The blue shell, the red shell, whatever, I guess.
The blue shell. You did it right.
Yeah, you got it right.
It was a banana in rehearsal. We've upgraded to blue shell. We're getting there. Mario Kart knowledge getting stronger. T1 remaining strong. Obviously a team that has topped groups so many times in the past. And while EDG, I think, were the clear favorites coming out of week 1. Week 2, T1 showed up. And then with a little support from 100 Thieves, they didn't have to show up a third time in what could have been the best of 3, denied, but fantastic so far.
I mean, that's the thing for me, Raz, the fact that we teed up the day yesterday talking about how for EDG, anytime they've been in a group against T1, they had been unable to eclipse them, take that #1 seed, but that they were positioned to do just that yesterday. And in the end, history repeated itself. T1 takes the top spot.
And that's why I was positioned to say, historically, X would have happened. EDG upsetting, going up against one of the lower tier teams. And it was like they were just breaking a lot of that. But as you can see on the screen, LCK historically dominant when it comes to the group stage.
Historically dominant, but this is not the LCK of old that earned those records. This is a new T1 FLICKR, obviously still at the center, but you have so many of the young players in the T1 lineup stepping up. We knew their early game was good, but so far at Worlds has been fantastic. Yes, it was shaky in week 1, but again, these week 2 turnarounds from so many teams are fantastic. I love the Poppies coming out.
Yes.
I love the Aphelioses with the Lulu Orianna. Like, to me, I just love watching this T1 play.
And that's why it comes down to the new faces, the rookies of the team in Gumayushi and Owner, who were just dominant. And I don't expect them to be changing. I know they were changing quite a bit throughout the year, but I expect them to be consistent with this roster, especially with how damn good they look. Kana was dominating.
So here we are, 2 LCK teams through in the top spot, but obviously we got to talk about 100 Thieves. The most classic North American exit to the tournament. It's a 3-3 record, but they can't escape the group stage. They did take down EDG, so leaving on a high note.
Absolutely. Fantastic, fantastic game. After the DFM game, which was shaky at best, it was messy, individual errors. Mechanically, you go, oh, this is not the swan song that you want to see for 100 Thieves. And man, did they turn it around coming into this game. Fantastic from start to finish. Dominant bot lane, comfort pick for closer. Everything that you and Azael promised me for this team came through and showed up against one of the tournament
keep your
favorites.
job, Raz. Well
Thankfully, thankfully. I will say, though, like the fact that they were able to go through their style and especially prove themselves that they could do it, great. If you were to tell me going up against EDG, going up against Viper and Mako, this is the strategy, I would have said, come back with a serious decision, with a serious game plan. We'll maybe play through mid this time, but no, they went straight towards bot lane. They succeeded at that. A good look.
Hey, if it works, it works. And to that end, you know, you've got a 4-2 EDG that I think showed some weakness in the end, right? This is, again, was a team that was talked about being the possible, you know, rival to Damwon when it came to tournament favorites. And so for them to get exposed in a way, I definitely don't think anyone's saying, oh no, this team's doomed, but it's definitely going to lay a bit of a blueprint for some teams, I think, as we move towards the quarterfinals.
Absolutely. And I think the big thing, I just continue to praise T1 drafting because I think the second time around, they really set themselves up for success. And you could see the holes in EDG's plans where, yes, they understood what was strong. They understood things like the Yuumi were very, very powerful. But then T1 had answers raring and ready to go. And I think as we go farther, we want to see kind of EDG's read on the meta update. But overall, while they are still a threat, definitely not infallible, definitely not unstoppable.
You mentioned meta. That's where we're going next. When it came to taking down EDG for 100 Thieves, a big factor in that, while yes, some kills were coming early in the bot lane, it was that Kennen up in the top by Someday. And more, Raz, this tournament seems to be revolving around the top side of the map.
Yeah, if you're coming into this tournament with a top laner that is dominant, and I'm looking at this group and looking at Xiaohu, that is your way in. Graves, I think a lot of teams have been finding struggles to be dealing with that.
Exhausted Kennen.
He exhausted, and he was still able to just erase 3 members with the help of closer on that one. So, like, that just goes to show the power of carry top laners in this meta.
I think so, and I think when you look at like how we got here, you see Renekton nerfed repeatedly, GP hit, so many of the safe blind pick champions, and Renekton just kind of felt like you must be this good in lane to pass the Renekton bar. He's not that test anymore. Now it just makes the little guy standing next to you, James, feel so oppressive.
Oh, my little friend here?
So powerful. And even, you know what, like, congrats. You're Jack's unstoppable on a side lane. But you know what just is always so good at every stage of the game? Kennen ult. You get a good Kennen ult, I don't care how strong your Jax is.
I feel like I got to do more, right, when these things are around, because they're in constant motion. I'm like, do I have to, what do I got to do? You see it there on your screens right now, kind of the pick rate and win rate of some of the most played top lane champions. But yeah, I mean, you see things like the Jace. The Graves is another one, another big one for me, Raz, that I'll call out next to the Kennen. Personally, I think Kennen's the strongest pick in the tournament right now, something that everyone has to consider more moving forward.
Yeah, coming into the tournament, I was expecting Jace because of his 3-item power spike, but then we've been seeing Kennen answer into it. Also, really easy gank setup with his ultimate. So there's a lot that's difficult to gank if you're diving a Kennen with ulti or set up for a play and make those team fights what we saw in replays. So definitely expecting more Kennen throughout this group.
Now, Raz kind of tipped his cap towards it already, but when you talk top lane and then you take a look at Group C, the first name that's going to come to mind is Xiaohu in the top lane for RNG. This guy showed us what he's made of back at MSI. He's already done that and more here at Worlds. And as the meta continues to move towards the top side of the map, I think this is one of the scariest players in the tournament.
And the most terrifying thing is not only is the meta good for him, he's also playing picks that are so clearly outside of the meta to such great success. You see the Lucians, you see the Syndra's. Top laners, they knew about the Lucian. They were ready for it after the nerfs. But that's a Syndra in the top lane. You've never, literally, you've never seen that champion levels 1 to 5. You're like, this champion sometimes roams to level 6, sometimes I roam and I kill her. What does she do in lane? I have no idea. And that flexibility that Xiaohu is bringing to the table is such a huge boon. On top of the fact that he is just far and away, I think, individually, the best top laner in this group.
Yeah, it's amazing to see, and we've got a stat screen up behind me on the big wall, and it's first, first, second, first, when it comes to the group stage performances so far for this guy. So absolutely nutty stats coming out of him. 36 CSD at 15. That's 1K gold by himself. And then he's finding an extra K through turret plates and team advantages. I mean, this is what's wild to me about that is you going into today, if you're looking at these stats, I don't know where you find the answer.
It's disgusting. And I think a lot of it comes to needing to play away from this, because I think RNG was really lucky to come into this tournament, and the meta really heavily favored them, right? Because not only is Wei an incredibly strong jungler, but he also plays towards top lane. Same goes towards Cryin. A lot of his picks is catered or roaming towards what is an all-pro best top laner in China, Xiaohu. So I think they're really well positioned, and they've been showing it in this group. Yeah,
and the struggle is like even if you somehow manage to find a favorable matchup against Xiaohu, Cryan's getting like TF all the time. This is the team to beat, right? I think it feels so hard, such a massive mountain to climb for anyone to get out in this group above RNG. RNG are the big bad, and it feels like not only does the meta favor them, but also on paper, they did look like the strongest team coming to this group anyway. So really, everything that can go right is going right for RNG right now.
We've painted a picture of the mountain that every team needs to climb here, and that is the mountain of RNG, sitting at 3-0 atop the standings. PSG Talon right behind them at 2-1, 1-2 for Hanwha Life Esports, and Fnatic bringing up the rear at 0-3. They're big competitive games, though, in this group throughout the first round robin. I think that's something that we should call out, even though it is very much, you know, a disparate look of the standings. And so for me, PSG absolutely have a shot at taking down RNG. Hanwha, if they're having their best day, and that's the real question, are they going to have their best day today? They could challenge any of the teams in this group as well.
1000%. And that's why I'm looking at PSG. I saw them at MSI, and a lot of the times when they come into the meta, it's just trying to learn from the best, and at the same time, understand how the meta shapes them. So they get better throughout the tournament. And they got better throughout week 1. So I'm looking at them, really interested in what they can show. I also just think looking at that game 2 later on today of Fnatic and RNG, I want to see how good Fnatic look with how they've been ramping up as well.
The other thing for me, Dracos, is even if we consider RNG to be a strong favorite, and I think most people do, okay, they go 6-0. There really is a solid battle for second place, at least taking place here. I'll contrast that to yesterday, where the expectation was it's going to be EDG, it's going to be T1, almost no matter what, maybe an outside shot for 100 Thieves.
Sure.
And they did make some kind of interesting moves with that last game of the day, but it all was for naught. This time around, I really do think we have something interesting in terms of second place.
I mean, 100%, right? So often it deflates the group a little bit if it becomes just a battle for seeding and if two teams are out and they're really just playing to ruin someone else's day. But in this case, we can have a very intense, very full day schedule because Fnatic are absolutely there to play spoiler. We've seen EU Miracle runs. I don't want to oversell them yet, but there is room to find these upsets. And again, RNG, if they don't 6-0, if they drop a single game to any one of these teams, that team has a huge advantage as they move later through the day.
I like to call it on Fnatic because historically, this is an organization that has made a lot of incredible stuff happen in week 2 of groups. And while, yes, we can all recognize that they were not dealt the nicest of hands here at Worlds this year, dealing with far more than any team should be expected to deal with, they should not be a team that's counted out. And we know that these players all individually are quite talented. The question is, will they show up today, make those kinds of plays to make the difference in this group and perhaps play spoiler?
Yeah, and they understand the tough circumstances they're under, and even seeing a lot of the tweets coming out of them for today, they know that it's, for them, throw their best punch and try and at least, much like what we saw from 100 Thieves yesterday, or like the intent, the initial intent from C9 as they come into the day, at least make ourselves look proud. Take it game by game.
We expect haymakers all day for Fnatic as we pull up our schedule for the day. Fnatic will have their shot at the Week 2 run back as Group C completes their final round robin in 6 games today, with any potential tiebreakers playing out immediately afterwards. So could be a big day. We'll have to see. But I think a lot of eyes right now are going to gravitate, of course, to the matchup number 1. We'll talk about that one in a moment. But matchup number 3, PSG versus RNG, the rematch, Dracos.
I mean, this is so massive because, again, this is the one circumstance where if you find this, suddenly we are talking about contesting top of the table. It is not just the RNG show 100% of the way through. And I'll say that PSG have been super adaptable. They adapted really well to what Hanwha was throwing out. I wonder if they can do the same against RNG. Again, such a titanic team, RNG. But if anyone can do it, it feels like PSG is the one.
That comes in the 3rd game of the day. The battle for second place, though, will come to a head when 2 uncrowned kings face off in the fight for a world's title that has always eluded them. Today's featured matchup, presented by Mercedes-Benz, is PSG Talon versus Hanwha Life. In a group where RNG seems one step above the rest, the frontrunners for second place are now PSG Talon and Hanwha Life Esports. For the PCS champions, this year has been a huge success. No player more exemplifies the struggle and heart that this region has than Maple, who has been the face of the PCS since his entry to the international stage back in 2013.
Straight on top of PSG. Maple looks for the backline as well. There's the slicing Maelstrom. The CC is beautiful under Maple. He threw it around like a ragdoll.
However, Chovy and Hanwha stand in their way, the mid lane superstar who carried the team to Worlds.
A quick shield, but they want to chase this one. The flash in. Not going to get it just yet, though, but a kick is there. Knockup is in. Under the tower they go. Chovy gets the double.
The question still remains, will he step up when a quarterfinal spot is on the line? This may be the matchup that decides who will make it out of Group C, with two mid lane icons facing off. Chovy and Maple are two longtime fixtures on the international stage, and this featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz could be a career-defining moment for these two mid laners as they face off for the second time in 2021.
And this is absolutely massive because, especially for Hanwha, you look at Chovy as the core of this team. He is everything, absolutely everything that you want, and he's the player that they play around. They need to perform. On the opposite side, PSG is this big team effort, but Maple is the guy who will roam, who will leave lane, who will set up other players for success. So it is such a clash of styles between these two players.
Yeah, I remember him from Season 3 on being on Gamania Bears, and he's always such a creative, lethal assassin, which is when I see him on LeBlanc, I'm excited to see him play. And then the other aspect of it is those team fights, being able to roam a little bit more frequently, help out Hanabi in the top side of the map, and work far more frequently with River.
Gamania Bears, that's a throwback if I've ever heard one. What a wonderful team. As we pull out of this package and you take a look at the back wall, you're going to see what I think is the perfect exemplification of the way that these two players play. That clash of styles where Chovy, so much more laning focus, plus 750 gold at 15. Pretty much the exact amount that Maple finds himself down. But typically, as you mentioned, Dracos, that's because he's making the time and the effort to get out to those side lanes and look to get somebody else ahead.
And it's so big, too, because the last time we played, we did see Chovy perform pretty well. The problem was PSG were packing triple teleport, and they just said, okay, well, you're over there. We're going to go, we're either going to group on you with more members and kill you, or we're going to go kill the weaker members of your team at any moment. So Chovy, yeah, he played a great Azir game. Problem is, when there are 3 TPs on the opposite side, you don't get the 1v1s. You don't get the 2v2s. You're just going to let the gold bag on the opposite side smack you around, and there's not a lot you can do.
And that's what Hanwha Life definitely have to be prepared for when going up against PSG, because they'll try and pile numbers on you. And with Hanwha Life dealing with less experienced players like Willer and Morgan, I think that was a valuable lesson the first week. So it's going to be nice to see how they respond to what PSG has to offer now.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big struggles in the previous game was obviously you just had these chain ganks bottom lane over and over. They wanted the Draven, they wanted the Pike to really get ahead. And when they weren't snowballing and taking off completely, the Yumis just had more guaranteed reliable value. So things just fell apart super quickly. That said, drafts have changed so much since, I mean, week 1 has been like 3 days, but drafts have changed so much over the course of this tournament that I expect Hanwha to draft themselves, set themselves up a little bit more for success, and respect that PSG just clearly have their number.
And that's why I think for Hanwha Life, I'd want them to swim against the current, play to what is been so good for this team. If your mid laner is achieving such great feats in lane, then great. Willer, set up a camp.
Yeah, that might have to be the answer because, yeah, it was Maple down 700, 800 gold, right?
Yeah.
But you take a look at those stats right there, and it's Hanabi who finds himself up 1,000 gold on picks like the Gwen. And so that is exactly all you need to know to understand the way that both of these teams are going to approach it. And with that earlier discussion around importance of topside, it may not be the Gwen this time around, but if it's the Kennen, if it's that Graves, will Hanabi find the same kind of success?
And actually, even going back to his comfort in GP and making it work when he went up against Adam, right? He had a CS lead, just a one-on-one lead. If there's going to be a person that rises above today, could very well be Hanabi. So it's going to be interesting to see if he goes back to one of those niche picks that he's so good at, those comfort picks, or if he does play something like Graves and Kennen that's been so dominant today.
And bringing it back to the featured matchup, I absolutely believe that Chovy will come out on top individually over Maple. But ultimately, that might not matter because Hanabi should outperform Morgan. So it is, instead, interestingly enough, even though mid lane is the hype matchup, it is eyes on top lane to see if Hanabi can do it again.
Now, you didn't know this was coming, but I want, in a word, which team is taking it here in game number 1. Is it going to be PSG? Is it going to be HLE?
I have faith in HLE.
All righty, over here.
No.
No. There it is. Team Contenders.
In the
That is the best possible way. Best possible way to start off the day. An all-important matchup for both of these teams that quite obviously want to shoot for that first place, but at the very least, make it out of the group stage. We're hopping right over to Medic, Cadril, and Azael in the arena.